Magic mushrooms, pumpkin pies. Welcome to the Tainted Tavern.
Welcome to the Tainted Tavern. Come sit inside for free.
Okay, now today I'm going to be reviewing Paul McCartney's new album, The Boys of Dungeon Lane, which came out Friday last, and I've listened to it all over the weekend. I've listened to it definitely more than a dozen times. In fact, I just listened to it again prior to starting this video. I ordered two iterations of this album. I ordered the CD and I ordered the blue vinyl. The blue vinyl hasn't arrived yet, which is kind of annoying because I ordered the CD from Amazon. I had that on Friday evening. But the blue vinyl I ordered directly from paulmccartney.com, from his store, and it hasn't come yet. But I have had a tracking message and it is arriving later today. So I'm looking forward to that. Super Kia Ghoul Groovy. So The Boys of Dungeon Lane, Paul McCartney's new album. Now Dungeon Lane is an area of Liverpool that leads down to the Oglet Shore. And this album is in fact it is Paul's most personal album. Chaos and Creation in the Backyard seemed like a personal album, but this is far more personal than this, and in my opinion this is a superior album to Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. So it's a personal album, and Paul's reminiscing about his childhood in Liverpool and other stuff that has taken on in this long and eventful life, and let's hope there's a lot more events and longevity in Paul McCartney's life. The guy is an absolute genius. Now, Dungeon Lane, Paul McCartney says that when he was a kid he used to go there bird watching. He'd have a copy of the Observer Book of Birds with him and he'd go bird watching down there. The Observer Book of Birds, I think everyone had one back in the day. I've still got my copy that I had when I was a kid. And this edition here is a 1960 edition. Yeah, this was published in 1960, but this is a revised edition which was printed in 1962. So this is quite possibly very, very similar to the copy McCartney had. The Observer Book of Birds, there were loads of Observer books. You had the Observer Book of Birds, you had the Observer Book of Birds' Eggs, the Observer Book of Plants, the Observer Book of Trees, the Observer Book of Trains, and each page is dedicated to a different subject. So I'm just going to open this at random so you can see the kind of book that Paul McCartney was reading. And there we have, it is a picture of a bird there, and it tells you the details of this particular species. This here is a ruff, so it tells us this is a ruff, and it gives us the Latin name Philomochus pugnax. Its length is 12 inches, and it shows a picture of both the male and the female bird. So this is the book that Paul McCartney is referring to when he talks about the Observer Book of Birds. Now, as I say, I've listened to this album several times over the weekend. I reckon more than a dozen times. I couldn't wait to hear it. Now, it wasn't out until Friday. I pre-ordered it. I didn't get my CD till Friday afternoon. But I stayed up Thursday night until the turn of midnight, so we went into Friday morning so I could stream the album straight away and hear it before I went to bed Thursday night, Friday morning, on Spotify. And I've made considerable notes here of the album. This is notes I've made while I've been listening to the album, largely on CD over the last few days. That's these notes rather. And these notes here are my initial reactions when I first heard it while I was streaming it on Spotify. I use Spotify linked to my hi-fi system, thanks to internet radio which doubles as a streamer. So I was getting good quality sound. So it was cool, to hear it like that the first time. But of course, once I'm playing it on CD, and I've got a cracking vintage CD from the late 80s, Panasonic with the double DAC, sounds excellent, going through my Yamaha Hump. I love my sound system. Now I will say, before I start this review, I'm going to go through it track by track very shortly, but I will say I'm confident enough to say that this is a masterpiece. Probably Paul McCartney's first actual masterpiece since probably Electric Arguments, and that's not to say that I'm knocking albums like New and Egypt Station and McCartney 3 that have come in between Electric Arguments and this. They have their strong points, but they're not as unified as and cohesive as this. Perhaps McCartney 3 comes the closest, but both Egypt Station and New, given the fact that they use different producers throughout the album, it's rather disjointed. And both New and Egypt Station are a lot longer than this album. This album comes in at 47 minutes, which to me is a sweet point for an album, because back in the day, vinyl records back in the day when the Beatles were operating and when Wings were operating and Lennon's first solo stuff and all of the Beatles with their solo stuff, albums usually ran about 45 to 50 minutes, and that is the perfect length for an album. When CDs took over in the mid-80s, and then when they dominated by the beginning of the 90s, every album seemed to be extended to 70, 80 minutes, which is basically what would have been back in the days when vinyl was king, a double album. And although there are some brilliant double albums out there, Exile on Main Street for one, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles' White Album, the Clash London Calling, by and large solid as true classic single albums, and this is a classic album. I think it's a masterpiece. McCartney 3, the previous album on Year, I think borders on masterpiece. It's the album that McCartney made in lockdown, but it's not as solid as this one. I do not believe there is a bad track on this song. And also Paul McCartney bringing in Nigel Watt as the producer, Andrew Watt rather, sorry, as the producer, has really tightened things up. Watt is a massive Beatles fan, and that shows. I mean, he produced the last Rolling Stones album, Acne Diamonds, which was superb, and the new Stones album, Coming From Foreign Tongues, he also produced that. Incidentally, McCartney appears on both of those Rolling Stones albums, playing bass on certain tracks. They were superb, and he's worked his magic here. I think what I like about this producer is he seems to understand what makes an artist, that is a legacy artist. He seems to understand the legacies of these artists, and to my mind Paul McCartney has never sounded better. This is a masterpiece. I confidently think this will go to number one in the UK, and I'm hoping it's number one in the US as well, because it certainly deserves it. It's an absolutely astounding album. So I'm going to go through this track by track now for you, and I'm going to use both sets of my notes. So the first song is called As You Lie There. Now on my first listen I wrote a spoken intro, but then I wrote some of the lyrics. I like to fantasize the meeting in your eyes, then it goes into lovely harmonies I wrote in rocky style, almost like the song Sliding from McCartney 3, but since I've listened to it a few more times, I think the rocky style of singing in this is more reminiscent of Nod Your Head, which comes from an earlier McCartney album. On repeated listens I added to this As You Lie There, great screaming vocals, spoken interludes. I used to walk, which is repeated throughout the song, and these harmonies which are interspaced into the song sounds as if they are coming from a bygone era. Now McCartney is singing as himself as an 83, close to 84-year-old man, but he's in the mindset of a young Paul McCartney, and it tells the story of a girl who lived very close to Paul McCartney in Liverpool. Her name was Jasmine. Paul gave that away in several interviews, and he was infatuated with her, but he never had the courage to go onto her. And the song almost makes him sound like a stalker in a certain way, you know, the way he's walking past her house and looking through her windows, almost as if he's up on the gutter and hanging from the downpipe, peering through the windows, hoping to get a glimpse of the sleeping Jasmine. Now, because he gave away the lady's name, we were able to trace her, and there was an article in a newspaper in which she'd been located and contacted. Her family said that she was never aware of Paul's feelings for her back in the day. So, well, she's aware now. Turns out the lady is Jasmine Howe, who was brought up very close to Paul McCartney, but she later moved. Today she's an 83-year-old lady, retired lady with 3 children, and she lives in the New Forest. But back when Paul McCartney knew her name was Jasmine Dobbs. Dobbs? Paul, you've been perving at my auntie. But anyway, regardless of that, it's an absolutely superb song. It's a brilliant album opener. That leads us in then to Lost Horizon, which I wrote on first listening. A rocker, thumbs up on this one. I made a note, really like this one. Well, I still like it after repeated listenings. I've written it's a cool rocker, it's a wonderful medley running through it. You've got to live for now, make every moment count, that's the lyric. And I've written down a little note, which I'm not sure if I agree with now with even more listenings, but when I wrote this down, the song was giving me a vibe. I've written down Delta Blues meets Rockabilly via Mystery Train, and I think I know what I meant there. It has got something of a bluesy sound, and the opening line does sum up the picture of a train journey. Again, it's an excellent song. That is followed track 3 on side 1 by Days We Left Behind. Now this is a beautiful song. It was the first single, if you can call it a single. I mean, singles are not really singles these days. That is in last year the Rolling Stones. They just released their new single as a physical CD and vinyl. Paul McCartney should have done that rather than just sending a single song out into the streaming verse. On my first hearing I wrote beautiful, wistful. His aged voice is used wonderful on this. Nothing stays the same are one of the lyrics. It's about John, it's about George, it's about everyone, it's about the entire Beatles, it's about Paul's own family. Nothing ever stays, but no one can erase the days we left behind. I wrote that on first listening, and on repeated listenings I put that this song is so beautiful, so smooth, so sweet, and when you're positioned between the speakers and you're allowing it to wash all over you, it's an absolute sensation. I wrote here for some weird reason, I wrote, it's so pleasurable, it's like having honey smeared on your knob. That goes right into then to Ripples on a Pond, which on first listen I thought it was a standout track. I wrote down on my first listen, it's up-tempo, and I did break yours standout on first listen. Later listens I've written, there's some great drumming on here, the answering vocals, I love you more than I ever did before, let's carry on making ripples in a pond, are excellently worked into the song. It's a brilliant song, another brilliant song. So that's 4 songs straight after each other, absolutely brilliant, not a dud there. There's not a dud on this entire album. I mean it, The Boys of Dungeon Lane is a masterpiece, and I've no doubt that as I go on, even with even more listens, it will grow on me even more. I thought for a little while that it was structured in the feelings of the songs in the way Sgt. Pepper's is structured, but I'm not so sure about that now. But it's definitely a lot of thought was taken into the sequencing of these tracks. Okay, so after Ripples in a Pond, we're into the song which remains my favorite on this album, and that is Mountaintop. And it's a kind of freak-out song. It's a psychedelic song. It mentions things like magic mushrooms and pumpkin pies in the sky. It's a great song, and it ends with a freak-out, a psychedelic freak-out, which is fucking wonderful to be shot on. First listen I wrote psychedelic, magic mushrooms, a geriatric acid trip. Now we're really tripping, great rocky guitar rush, magic mushrooms, peeping through, seem to want to talk and say hello, freak out in the middle section and also at the end. And on later listens I wrote mushrooms, pumpkin pies, an intro which is reminiscent, not in the way it sounds, but in the sensation it gives, which is reminiscence of tracks like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and even The Fool on a Hill. Pumpkin pies in the skies. It's a great track. That leads into Down South. This is a very simple song. Paul has said this is about him and George Hitchhiking. It's very sparse instrumentation. It's just Paul and an acoustic guitar, and his aged voice again. is really effective on this track. Okay, after Down South we did the We Too. On first listen I wrote about We Too. I wrote We Too. What did I write? I wrote, is this about Nancy or John? And sound tape recording. I'll explain what I meant by there now, because I think that's a very effective bit of the song. Now that I've heard it a few more times, I think it's about Nancy, Paul's wife. I Want to Live for Love, over and over again. The song has really grown on me, and it ends with over and over again, and then we go into the sound effects of a tape being rewound, as if to suggest we're going back to the beginning of the track and listening to it over and over again. It's a good little touch, a lovely little touch. After that is Come Inside, which is another rocker. On first listen I wrote Come Inside, rocker, open up your heart, open up your mind, great hooks, great up-tempo groove, and loads of yes, yeah, yeah. Loads of that in it. I wrote on later listen another rocker, an excellent modern sounding song with a great repeated riff. Yeah, yeah, that's another fantastic song. We're more than halfway through the album now and we haven't hit a dud. That goes on Never Know, which is pretty simplistic but a great soundscape with horns that are reminiscent of the ones used in Penny Lane. On first listen I wrote a rocker, open up your heart, open up your mind, great hooks, great up-tempo groove, lots of years. So, you know, following on was, no, I've skipped the song now, haven't I? Yeah. So we're on to Home to Us next, which was the second single from the album. And this is the duet with Ringo Starr, which makes it special in itself because of that. It's a straightforward type feel-good song in which Paul's singing about his Liverpool home and what it was like in the days when he was growing up, when it was still bomb sites all over the city where the children would play, where you'd stay out playing all day and only come in when the street lights are gone on. There's a lot of that in it. We've got Chrissy Hyde and Charlotte Spiteri giving backing vocals in one section. It's a really effective song. On first listen I wrote Duet with Ringo, excellent song, great fun, bouncy. Nice to see Ringo extolling Liverpool for a change after he famously called it a shithole or something years ago. On the repeated listen, my opinion has more or less stayed the same, and I put Lovely to Hear Paul and Ringo duetting together. That follows on with Life Can Be Hard, which is reminiscent to me of A Taste of Venus from McCartney 3. And I feel that auto pitch has been used a little bit in this song. You can hear it in the voice. But then, thinking about that, you know, we tend to obsess too much about things like that these days, because even going back to the Beatles' first album, they always used effects on their vocals, double tracking, whatever. So it's no different to the sandbox they work with now to the way they used to work with the recording sandbox back in the day. So I wrote a Beatley instrumental section. I like this one, and I wrote a note there of oddly robotic on times, and that is where I think the auto pitch may have been a little bit, or auto tune rather, may have been a little bit overused in that song. But it's a good, effective song, and with repeated listens, I'm losing that kind of roboticness that I felt I detected on Paul's voice. I did write on repeated listens reminiscent of Taste of Venus. It definitely has that about it, and Paul's vocal style in this is very similar to the style he uses in Taste of Venus. That follows on the First Star of the Night. On first listen I wrote It's Raining in Costa Rica, which is the opening spoken word part that Paul mentions, which is taken from the fact that he initially recorded this song when he was writing it during a stormy night in Costa Rica, and he recorded it onto his phone, and that's how he started the song on his phone. He said it's raining in Costa Rica. I wrote down it's got lovely harmonies, so it's a great song. Maybe not up to the standard of something like Come Inside or We Too, but it's certainly not a weak song. There are no real weak songs on this album. Then he goes on to, we're coming on to the final two songs, Life Can Be Hard rather. which is what I just said, reminiscent of A Taste of Venus. First Star of the Night, lovely harmonies. So then we're going on to the last two songs. I've messed this up, haven't I? I've jumped back and forth several times, so I do apologise about that. But the running order of these songs are, it's reading from all these notes are, As You Lay There, Lost Horizon, Days We Left Behind, Ripples in a Pond, Mountain Top, Down South, We Too, Come Inside, Never Know, Home to Us, Life Can Be Hard, First Start of the Night, and then the album ends with two powerhouse tracks, Salesman Saint and Mama Gets By. So we're on to Salesman Saint. Now Salesman Saint as an old school type intro which reminded me of spaghetti westerns, that type of theme. It's about Paul's mum and dad. My father was a salesman, of course Jim McCartney was a cotton salesman, and my mother was a saint. She was a midwife and Paul looked upon her as a saint. It's a great track. On first listen I wrote Western intro. The wall was nearly over, the peace would soon begin. That's a lyric from the song. The only entertainment we had was a piano and a radio. That's another lyric. Glenn Miller bits I wrote, and it does have that old school type of big band orchestration working throughout the song, which I think is a nod by Paul to his own dad, Jim McCartney, who used to play in a band doing that type of music. But it's got a lot of theatrical flourishes running through it. It's a really, really, really good song. Okay.
Now you can do your own thing and win your own thing from the Uncola 7-Up. You can pick from among 7 different grand prizes. A Mustang Mach 1, a $5,000 wardrobe by Mr. Mort, movie equipment, skiing in Chile, boats, beach buggy, stereo. 7-Up is giving you a chance at 9,079 great things. One of them's just gotta be yours.
Really good song. Okay, the final song on the album is Mama Gets By. Now, on first listen I wrote Mama Gets By, slow start, Mama Gets By, Papa Gets High. That's all I wrote. I think Mama Gets By is a fantastic track, one of the best on the album. It's really, really strong, but on first listen it didn't immediately catch me, and it took a couple of listens before I got trapped by that infectious groove that McCartney's producing. Now on the later listens, my notes, I wrote Linda, ? And then I've added, after yet another listen, I definitely think it's about Paul and Linda. Initially I thought this was about Paul's mother, another song about Paul's mother. But the more I listened to it, particularly with lyrics like Mama Gets By, Papa Gets High, I thought, strange for Jim McCartney to be getting high all those years back. And I realised then also the spelling of the song Mama Gets By is the same spelling as Paul used in Mama Miss America from his first album, McCartney 1, which was an instrumental track about Linda, Mama Miss America. So I've got a feeling that this song is very much Paul's reminiscing about the early days. The Beatles had just split up, or were in the process of splitting up. Paul and Linda decamped to his property up in Scotland. And Paul was depressed then, and this story is well known. Paul's even talked about it himself. He was drinking Scotch whiskey for breakfast. That's my kind of man. He was stoned all the time, and Linda managed to keep him together. And that's what I feel this song is about. Now Paul says no, he says this is about fictional people, fictional characters, the type of characters he likes to write about. So Paul denies that this is about him and Linda. I don't believe him. I mean, Paul denied that the big whack of wacky-backy in his suitcase wasn't his at one time, didn't he? So he doesn't always stick to the strict truth, shall we say. I really think this song is about Paul and Linda, and I think it's about those early days in Scotland. There's a line in there about Mama having to go out to work to earn the money to put the food on the table, and I thought, well, that can't really apply to Paul and Linda. And yet at the time, during those early days, all Paul's money was tied up in Apple, in the legal battles that were going on. So Paul was seeing very little money, and the revenue that they had to live on was Linda McCartney's revenue. So then when you think of it along those lines, it even becomes more certain that this song is about Paul and Linda. And even if Paul didn't write it consciously about him and Linda in the early days in Scotland, then subconsciously he certainly did. It's a fantastic song and one of the standouts on the album. But the thing is about this album, it's difficult to have standout tracks because it is so well sequenced. The care taken into producing this album has been of the top quality, and it is a classic album, so it all works together. Last night I was on a couple of Beatle live streams, not actually being on the live streams myself, but taking part in the live streams. In other words, I was there watching and commenting with the hosts. Andrew Dixon did a great one. And other people have been saying that this song is about Paul and Linda. So it's not only me feeling that. And I also watched another live stream with me and Mr. Mayo, which again was a really fantastic one. I do like me and Mr. Mayo, although we both massive McCartney fans, although our opinions on Paul seem to differ widely, and certain songs that Mayo likes I don't like. And he doesn't like, for instance, perfect example is the album Press to Play from Paul McCartney from the mid-80s, which I absolutely adore. Mayo's not a big fan of that, so I think we like different forms of McCartney. I think Mayo is more to the poppy, really well-polished, expertly executed songs. I think he leans more towards that one. Myself, I like more experimental McCartney. But I think on The Boys of Dungeon Lane, Paul gives something for both of our different opinions on who Paul McCartney is there. It really is a stunning album. It really is a masterpiece. I'll probably give a quick pocket review of this in a few weeks once I've had my blue vinyl and I've listened to that a few more times to see how it's grown on me in a month. But after about a dozen listens over the weekend, I think this is an absolutely fantastic album. It's best since Electric Arguments. So I would urge anyone with an interest in quality music to go out and get this album. It is absolutely fucking super. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. What did you think of Dungeon Lane? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let's talk. And also, if you haven't, then please subscribe to this channel. I love the channel growing. It doesn't cost you anything. So that's all for now. Bye for now. Come back soon to the Tainted Tavern. Cheers, Yaki Da. See you soon.
Come back soon.